sending him grenades instead of Christmas ham.
Yeah.
And
Cannot do this. Alright guys, welcome back again. It's your boy Veli. So today we're going to be diving into Canadians change when they hear the word war.
This reminds me of when we checked how
ballistic.
I was shocked. I could not believe my ears.
Canadians are not normal. So we're about to hear how you guys act when the word war comes up. So stick around. Let's go.
The most peaceful people.
not sorry. While Canadians are nowadays subject to the stereotype of hockey-loving, maple syrup-chugging, overly polite potheads, their wartime stereotypes in the First and Second World Wars had their enemies trembling in their boots and making a hot mess in their trousers. It's as if when the Canadians hear the word war, their insatiable desire for maple syrup and Canadian beer turns into an insatiable desire
For blood.
In saying that, however, they didn't always rush enemy positions with bayonets, meat cleavers and spiked clubs, but were some of the most well-trained and formidable soldiers on any front in any war. In this video, we're going to explore Canadian wartime reputation, keeping our scope focused on World War II and the heroic feats of individual Canadian soldiers therein.
Unknown fact of history.
Really?
It's really interesting. I love how he started it.
Yeah. Well, like, sorry, not sorry.
I really want to try the maple syrup.
I think we have. Key, yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true. That's true.
To get the puck sliding, let's move our scope quickly to the First World War, in which the Canadians laid the groundwork for their reputation as shock troopers. Mostly, the troops of the Canadian Corps were known for their savage raids on enemy trenches and their unwritten take no prisoner and kill the wounded policies. Locked in a stalemate in a
Take no prisoner.
And kill the wounded policy.
Yeah, they said this too in that ballistic.
Yeah.
So I like, what?
No prisoner.
No.
The prisoner that caught, they dropped grenade in their pockets.
Yeah.
And they blew and the guy was laughing.
They dropped grenade in their pocket.
Yeah, they took a prisoner and the guy put a grenade that was like opened in the guy's pocket and I went front. And the guy, like, they blew like, poof. And the person that dropped it was laughing. That shit, like,
Yeah,
it gave me shiver, like, shock, like,
You kill
Wow.
or get killed.
You all are crazy.
opposing trenches, the Canadians devised all manner of strategies and weaponry to flip the chessboard upside down and clean up the enemy pieces. Cutting through barbed wire, they crept upon them in the cover of night with painted faces, launching either savage, unforeshadowed raids or perking up their ears and eavesdropping on enemy plans. In said raids, the Canadians gorged their bayonets with blood and made good use of improvised melee weapons, paying little attention to attempts at surrender and skewering bandaged and unarmed men just the same as men on their feet with rifles.
Wow.
They even concocted an alchemist's shelf of homebrew explosives, like pipe bombs and jam jars loaded with nails and gunpowder. I think it's a safe bet to say that at least one grenade is made with a maple syrup jar. There are also tales of Canadian troops using temporary truces, like on Christmas Day, as a chance to catch their enemy with his stockings on, sending him grenades instead of Christmas ham and bullets through the brain instead of season's greetings. Now, it could be argued that Canadians were acting out of vengeance, but couldn't that argument be used to justify most atrocities in most wars? Canadian Lieutenant R.C. Germain's letter home to his parents makes the revenge excuse about as clear as the sap from a freshly tapped maple tree. After losing half of my company there, we rushed them, and they had the nerve to throw up their hands and cry "Kamerad." All the camarade they got was a foot of cold steel, while I blew their brains out with my revolver. Despite being a little
Oh my god. See, I know some of you are going to be like saying I'm evil for laughing at this. One reason why this makes me happy is this. I'm going to tell you the truth of the matter. When I first watched
Ballistic?
No, not how ballistic. This
Holocaust.
Nazi, yeah, the Holocaust. You know, I was like, is there nobody
Yeah.
that will match their energy and teach these people that, you know, teach them some lessons
Give them a taste
of their own.
medicine.
Do you understand? And see the fact that the Canadians they cooked up that soup.
Now you're making it funny to me.
a lot of spices.
You understand? And they even added maple syrup. I'm sorry. Regardless, these are human lives. We should take them seriously. But nevertheless, I feel very happy that at least they got a taste of their own poison. You understand? So that we know that what you dish, another person can dish it out for you. Let's continue.
Come on.
Come on.
Little
exactly.
stab happy with enemy soldiers, Canadian troops were known for being quite, as we contemporary folk have come to expect, polite to civilian populations. Before we have a look at Canadian reputation in World War II and some of its stories, it might pay to know about Canada's involvement in the war. Canada waited until the 10th of September 1939 to declare war in Germany because it didn't want to follow Britain like a Commonwealth sheep.
Okay.
It took Canada until the 11th of June 1940 to declare war on Italy and the 7th of December 1941 to declare it on Japan. Overall, about 10% of Canada's population fought for her and the Allies. This amounted to around 1,100,000 Canadians serving in the Canadian Army, the Royal Canadian Navy, and the Royal Canadian Air Force. Of this 1,100,000, the majority were volunteers.
Wow.
Canadians fought in almost every theatre of World War II, notably in the defence of the United Kingdom, the Battle of Hong Kong, the Dieppe Raid, the invasions of Sicily and Italy, the Normandy landings and the liberation of France, and the liberation of Belgium and the Netherlands. The Canadian Navy escorted Allied ships across the Atlantic and maintained a high presence in the Pacific Ocean, and pilots from the Canadian Air Force flew under the wing of the British Royal Air Force. German submarines sunk Canadian naval and merchant vessels in the water of Canada and Newfoundland and attacked the loading pier at Bell Island. And the Japanese also attacked the lighthouse on Vancouver Island, though little else occurred in Canadian waters or on mainland Canada. Of the military operations in which Canadians were involved, their ferocity and inventiveness stood out in the Battle of Ortona, the Normandy landings, and the liberation of Belgium and the Netherlands. Through the medieval streets of Ortona, Italy, the Canadians and Germans engaged in brutal room-to-room, hand-to-hand fighting,
Wow,
with the
hand to
Germans
hand.
eventually having to withdraw. Here, the Canadians coined the tactic mouse holding, which is basically blowing holes in buildings to allow the passage of infantry rather than running into enemy bullets in the open. In the D-Day landings, the Canadians landed on Juno Beach, the second most resisted beachhead besides Omaha. The Canadians penetrated further inland than anyone else, coming up against some of the strongest units in the German military. In Belgium and the Netherlands, the Canadians spent thousands and thousands of Canadian lives to drive the Germans back and get food to the starving civilian populations.
Wow.
They even shared rations with civilians and gave them blankets. Some of the most intense combat here was in the Battle of Scheldt, where the Allies fought through flooded terrain against stiff German defenses for about a month. This battle alone cost the Canadians more than 6,000 casualties. This latter triumph, particularly the part about getting food to the starving civilians, is certainly keeping with Canadian tendencies in the First World War, though the following atrocity paints a bit of a different picture. Canadian Lieutenant Colonel Frederick E. Wiggle was shot dead on approach to the town of Friseute, Germany, and a rumor spread that it was a civilian sniper from that town who shot him. Back on that revenge train, the Canadians burnt down the entire town, apparently moving its citizens onward before setting their homes on fire.
Okay, that's
It was
fair.
discovered later that Wiggle was shot by German soldiers. Now, the intent of emphasizing Canadian brutality in World War I and mentioning the Friseute incident is not to take away from Canadian bravery in either world conflict. Like I said before, Canadians were some of the most well-trained and formidable soldiers on any front in any war, and I think the best way to communicate that is to share some stories involving some of the most heroic Canadian soldiers in World War II. On the 14th of December 1943, Canadian Captain Paul Triquet and his company, supported by an armoured squadron, tried to cross the gully and take the Casa Berardi, a hamlet on the Orto Orsona lateral, Italy. Under heavy machine gun and mortar fire, Triquet ran around organising and inspiring what remained of his men, saying, "There are enemy in front of us, behind us and on our flanks. There is only one safe place. That is on the objective," before charging forward and breaking through the enemy line. Triquet's company and the supporting tank squadron pushed right up to the edge of Casa Berardi, where he set up defenses and fought off a tank-supported German counterattack with whatever weapons he could find.
Wow.
He held the defensive perimeter against superior numbers until the rest of the battalion came in and relieved the company. Triquet's utter disregard of danger, his cheerfulness and tireless devotion inspired his men, and his tactical skill and leadership facilitated the capture at a vital point on the Ortona-Ossona lateral. On the 18th of August 1944, Canadian Major David Vivian Currie was in command of a force of tanks, self-propelled anti-tank guns and infantry. His task was to block an escape route from the Falaise pocket in the village of Solimbourg-sur-Divers, Normandy. Currie went in alone to scout German defences and to free the crew of 2 Allied tanks which were previously disabled. Under heavy mortar fire, he succeeded. The Germans then kept throwing counterattacks at Currie and his men until on the 20th, one final German counterattack was thwarted by Currie, costing the Germans some 2,900 casualties. Throughout these 3 days of intense combat, Currie displayed gallant conduct and a contempt of danger and collected and inspired his men. One of his officers said, "We knew at one stage that it was going to be a fight to the finish, but he was so cool about it, it was impossible for us to get excited." Over the 3 days, Currie barely got an hour's sleep, and when it was over, he fell asleep standing and then crashed to the ground.
Wow.
Currie's courage and devotion to duty had a far-reaching effect on the successful outcome of the battle. French-Canadian Corporal Leo Major was also in Normandy, where he captured a German armoured vehicle which held secret codes and lost an eye to a phosphorus grenade. He stayed in service, saying that he looked like a pirate. However, it wasn't in Normandy where Leo earned his first Distinguished Conduct Medal, but in the Netherlands in 1945. Actually, before we go there, Leo single-handedly captured 93 Germans in the Battle of
How?
Schell.
How?
When out on a solo reconnaissance mission in 1944. He escorted all 93 of them back to his camp, where he would not accept a DCM because he considered the person awarding it to him to be incompetent. Back to
93.
1945
That's
and the
wild.
real DCM. After breaking his back, ribs, and both ankles when the car he was in was hit by a landmine, Leo went on a recon mission with a friend in the city of Zwolle. His friend was killed, so Major continued alone, capturing a German soldier, making the soldier take him to his officer, who was in a bar, and then telling that German officer that the Canadian artillery was going to shell and kill them all. Leo then ran through the city, firing his gun and lobbing grenades, fooling the Germans into thinking the Canadian army was invading. All through the night, Major brought captured German troops back to his camp, resting in civilian houses whenever he needed to catch his breath. He
Wow.
then set a Gestapo
Real
HQ on
Rambo.
fire
Yes,
and
like he
assaulted
single-handedly
One
did
man.
that on his own.
One man squad.
One man
This is
squad.
John Wick in real life.
Thank you.
The pirate John Wick. Like,
This guy's story just sent shivers to my
this is
spine.
the inspiration of this action movie.
Eh?
Also, then we watching this movie, be like, oh my
I
god,
cannot do this.
like, this John Wick is fiction, but like, bro, so this shit is real. Like, people actually abuse like that.
So people are crazy like that.
We need to go hands on
Nazi
with the full
SS
army.
HQ before meeting with members of the Dutch resistance and informing them that he had liberated the entire city by himself. I've got to say, that last one is pure insanity.
Pure
What an
insane.
absolute machine. Overall, based on the available evidence at least, I think Canadians in World War II abandoned their unofficial take no prisoner and kill the wounded policies of World War I.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, this is a generalization, and the Friesleute incident certainly demonstrates that they were at least capable of unjust violence, though there is no comparing the deeds of the Canadians to, say, the Germans, the Japanese, and the Soviets. As evinced by the stories of Paul Triquet, David Currie, and Leo Major, Canadian courage and formidability was in no short supply, and I believe modern-day Canadians should be proud of how the Canadian military cleaned up their act after World War I and made such a brave and significant contribution to an Allied victory in the Second World War. Anyways, guys, make sure you let me know your thoughts on Canada and some of the super soldiers we mentioned in the last bit of
Talk
this video in the
about-
comments section below.
Bravery.
Bravery.
And just before you go, guys, make sure you check out some of the links in the description below.
I thought there's going to be like a recap at the end or something like that.
But the thing is that normally Canadians are quiet, calm.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't imagine them to be like this. Very
Yes, I'm even
Yeah.
surprised.
Like the inner beast.
Mm.
Scary.
No, there was this video you and I checked out. I think it was you and I. They said if you want them to be good, they will be good.
If you want them to be bad.
Do you understand? So in whichever way you try to get them,
respond.
they respond. You understand? Yeah. And there was something they mentioned, right? And I want to get a clarity on it. Now the thing is this: when they talked about the Canadians in World War I and World War II, you could sense that they were or they are a mighty military presence
Yeah.
back in those war, right? But the comedies we watched recently make it seem like as if the Canadian army is no longer as strong.
strong as
As
this
it
one.
Do you understand? So I don't get what happened. What happened over the years? Like what dwindled the might of this Canadian army that I'm seeing in this video. That they don't even need much, they just need one man.
Yeah.
One man could capture an entire battalion.
They're really crazy.
Almighty man.
Honestly, this is the best I've ever seen. Like I really love that guy. His
guy is
insanity.
major, right?
Yeah, his insanity is woo.
The fact that I deceive them thinking they are other Canadian.
Canadian army attacking, and he took prisoner. He even took 90.
93. Like, do you know what
I'm
means to take like 3
thinking
Germans?
how it did it.
Like,
That 93 months surrender, drop off the.
Like, what did
no.
he say
Is
to
it
them?
holding a big machine gun to them or a nuclear arm? I would really
It has to
know
be
that.
something he said to
If
them.
it is about this guy, I feel like he was only holding a nuclear.
Why? I would drop this in everybody would die. Drop that thing.
Alright guys, thank you guys for sticking around to this part. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment on this video. I hope to see you on the next one. For now, remember, blessed and bye.